bullying narcissist.
He's a narcissist, so.
She's a narcissist.
Have you ever noticed that when someone realizes they can't control you anymore, they suddenly turn everything into a dramatic crisis? When you say no to something, suddenly there's an emergency. When you start feeling good about yourself, they create chaos. When you stop reacting to their games, they escalate everything into life or death situations. Well, you've clicked on the right video because what you're experiencing isn't random. If you're dealing with someone who's suddenly creating drama right when you started standing up for yourself, this video will change how you see everything. I've researched Carl Jung's depth psychology to decode exactly what's happening in their mind when they realize they're losing control. By the end of this video, you'll understand why your growth terrifies them so much, how to recognize their predictable escalation pattern, and most importantly, how to become completely unmanipulatable. I'll also show you how to use their desperation as proof of your own growing power. Now here's what most people don't understand. When you think their attacks are random, you keep getting caught off guard. But Carl Jung discovered there's actually a predictable 3-stage pattern to this behavior. What if I told you that understanding this psychology gives you an unfair advantage? The question isn't whether you can handle their manipulation, it's whether you're ready to become someone they simply can't manipulate. To understand why your strength triggers their worst behavior, we first need to look inside their mind and see what Jung discovered about their psychological structure. So here's where it gets interesting. Most people think narcissists attack your strengths because they're jealous. And honestly, I used to think that too. It seems logical, right? They see something good in you and want to tear it down out of envy. But here's the problem. When you think it's just jealousy, you try to fix it by hiding your strengths or making them feel better about themselves, and that never works. Because jealousy isn't what's really happening. What if I told you that Carl Jung discovered something much more disturbing? Your genuine strength doesn't just annoy them, it threatens their entire psychological survival. Here's what Jung figured out. Think about how healthy people grow up. We start as kids pretending to be perfect, but eventually we learn to accept our flaws. We get comfortable with being human. Sometimes strong, sometimes weak, sometimes right, sometimes wrong. That's normal psychological development. But narcissists, they got stuck at the pretending stage. They never learned to be comfortable with being imperfect humans. So instead of growing a real personality, they built what Jung called a persona. Basically, a perfect character they play 24/7 to get admiration. The problem is, this perfect character isn't real. It's like they're constantly acting in a movie where they're the hero, and they can never break character because underneath, there's almost nothing there. Now this is important. When you start genuinely growing stronger, not fake confidence, but real inner strength, you become a walking reminder of everything they're not. You're not just threatening their ego, you're threatening their entire false reality. Think of it this way. Imagine someone at work who's convinced everyone they're the natural leader of the team. But when you start quietly solving problems and getting results without needing to announce it, their whole identity as the competent one crumbles. Your actual leadership exposes that theirs was just loud talking and taking credit. But it gets worse. Here's the scary part. They genuinely can't see your strengths as strengths. Their brain automatically flips everything backwards to protect their fake image. So when you're understanding and caring, they call you too sensitive. When you set healthy boundaries, they call you selfish. It's not that they're lying, their mind literally reverses reality to make you the problem. This is why arguing with them about your qualities never works. You're not dealing with someone who can see clearly. You're dealing with someone whose psychological survival depends on not seeing your strength. Remember when I said we'd understand why they get more vicious as you get stronger? This is it. Your growth isn't just threatening their superiority, it's threatening the very foundation of their false self. But this is just the foundation, because once you understand their psychological structure, you can start to see the predictable pattern of how they fight back. So now that you understand why your strength terrifies them, here's where it gets really interesting. Most people think narcissistic abuse is random. They just lash out whenever they feel like it. And I'll be honest, I used to think that too. It seemed like pure chaos. But here's the problem with thinking it's random. When you can't see the pattern, you keep getting caught off guard. You're always reacting instead of understanding what's coming next. What if I told you that Jung actually mapped out their entire playbook? There's a predictable 3-stage system they follow when their fake identity starts cracking. Let me break this down for you, because once you see this pattern, you can't unsee it. Stage 1 is what I call strength shaming. Remember how we talked about their brain flipping your strengths into weaknesses? This is where they attack. They'll say things like, "You think you're so perfect when you're just being responsible." Or, "You're making everyone uncomfortable when you're setting boundaries." The goal here is simple. Make you doubt yourself so much that you start hiding your abilities and become easier to control. They're basically trying to shame you back into being smaller. Now, here's what actually happens when this doesn't work. They move to stage 2, nostalgic manipulation. Notice how their strategy completely shifts from attack to seduction. This is where they suddenly remember how perfect things used to be. Remember when we never fought? You used to be so much fun. I miss the person you used to be. What they're really saying is, go back to being the person I could control. The goal here is to make you feel guilty for growing. They want you to regret becoming stronger and more independent. It's basically their way of punishing you for outgrowing their small world and threatening their fake reality. But here's the thing nobody tells you. Both of these stages are still attempts to work within reality. They're trying to change your behavior through normal manipulation. Stage 3 is where they completely lose it. When shaming fails and nostalgia fails, they do something Jung identified as truly dangerous. They stop trying to change reality and start trying to replace it entirely. This is where they create what I call a fake crisis, a sudden emergency, a mysterious illness, a dramatic financial disaster, something so overwhelming that it forces you to stop focusing on your own growth and start focusing on saving them. Now, this is important. This isn't just manipulation anymore. Jung would call this the emergence of what he called the shadow magician. Basically, they become masters of illusion, creating an entirely fake reality that only they can navigate. Here's how this works. They design the fake crisis to be intentionally overwhelming and confusing, something you can't solve or escape from. Think about it. A mysterious illness with no clear diagnosis, a financial disaster that doesn't quite add up, or a threat from someone you can't contact. It's designed to create so much chaos that you can't think straight. The whole point is to shatter your confidence and make you feel helpless. Once you're confused and scared, guess who shows up as the hero? They do. Suddenly, they're the only one who understands the situation and can guide you through it. This puts them right back in control. The scary part? They're not necessarily lying consciously. Their need to control has become so desperate that they've convinced themselves this fake crisis is real. But here's what changes everything. Once you recognize this pattern, their desperation becomes predictable, and predictable means you can prepare for it. So now you can predict their moves. But here's where most people get stuck. They think knowing the pattern is enough. And I totally get it. I used to think the same thing. If I just understand what they're doing, I can outsmart them. But there's a problem with this approach. When you try to fight their manipulation with logic or evidence, you're still playing their game. You're still reacting to their moves instead of becoming someone they can't manipulate in the first place. What if I told you there's a way to become completely unmanipulatable? Not by getting better at defending yourself, but by changing who you are at a fundamental level. Here's what Jung discovered that changes everything. The relationship with a narcissist, as painful as it is, actually forces you to confront parts of yourself you never knew existed. Remember how we talked about their attacks making you feel like, this isn't me? That's actually the beginning of something powerful. Let me break down what actually happens during this process, because this is where the real transformation begins. First, you have to stop being ashamed of your reactions. When they pushed you to your breaking point and you said or did things that shocked you, that wasn't weakness. That was your psyche showing you parts of yourself that exist. Jung would say you're meeting your shadow, and that's actually essential for becoming whole. Here's the thing nobody tells you. Instead of hiding from those dark reactions, you need to own them. Not act on them, but acknowledge they're part of you. When you accept all parts of yourself, the good and the messy, you become impossible to shame. Second, You have to stop seeing them as either the perfect person from the beginning or the monster they became. Both of those images came from your own mind, not from who they really are. You created an ideal version and then a villain version, but neither was actually them. The real them? They're actually much smaller and more pathetic than either version. Now this is important. When you commit to becoming your authentic self, flaws and all, something magical happens. Manipulative people literally can't get a grip on you anymore. You become like trying to control water. Here's what this actually means for you. Start noticing when you're hiding parts of yourself to avoid conflict. Stop defending your strengths and just be them. Use their desperation as information about your growth, not as emotional fuel for drama. The ultimate irony? Their attempt to destroy your strength actually becomes the catalyst for you becoming stronger than you ever imagined. They give you the greatest gift, the motivation to become unmanipulatable. What once felt like evidence of your weakness, their escalating attacks, is actually proof of your growing power. Remember when I asked if you've noticed how they turn everything into drama when they can't control you anymore? Now you know this isn't random chaos. It's predictable psychological desperation. You've gone from a confused victim to someone who sees the pattern and understands exactly what's happening. Becoming unmanipulatable, just like Jung's individuation process, isn't about perfection or never having reactions. It's about dedication to becoming your authentic self. As cliché as it might sound, success comes from loving the journey of self-discovery, not just reaching some final destination where you're fixed. Be committed to the process of integrating all parts of yourself. Make sure you stay consistent with recognizing their patterns and not taking their desperation personally. Guys, practice noticing when they're escalating, experience your own growth without shame, and put in the hard work of becoming whole. That resilient effort beats their manipulation tactics every single time. Thanks for watching. Subscribe if you want more insights into Jung's psychology and how to become truly unmanipulatable. Leave a thumbs up if this perspective shift was helpful. See you next time. Peace.